The planet of Thrynos was a quiet world of silver seas and tall crystal forests. Its people, the Thrinians, were gentle builders and singers. They valued harmony over war, peace over conquest. For many generations they had lived without fear, but now their skies burned with terror. From the edges of the galaxy came the Harvek drones. No one truly knew where these machines were born. Some whispered that they were weapons left behind by an ancient empire. Others said they were creatures turned into machines, doomed to wander forever in hunger. Whatever their origin, their purpose was simple: consume and destroy. The drones descended on colonies without mercy. They tore apart cities, stripped planets of their minerals, and left behind lifeless ruins. They were endless, like waves of metal storms, and no negotiation could stop them. The Thrinians had no army strong enough to resist. Their defense ships were old and light, meant only for travel and trade. Their shields could protect small villages, but not whole continents. Desperation spread across their people like fire. If no help came, their kind would be erased. So the Council of Thrynos made a choice. They would call for help beyond their borders. Inside the great crystal hall, the council gathered. The light of their twin suns glowed through the walls as leaders debated. Elder Mirat, his voice calm but filled with sorrow, spoke first. "We cannot stop the Harvek drones alone. We must send a cry to the stars. Let every empire hear our voice." Some disagreed. High Scholar Vela shook her head. "Why would the great powers listen to us? To them we are small. We have no riches, no strong fleets, no value to offer." But Mirat lifted his hand. "Even so, we must try. For if we remain silent, then no one will even know that we are gone." So it was decided. The Thrinians poured their last hope into a massive beacon. The signal was built with all their energy and resources, designed to reach far across the galaxy. It carried not only words but also images of their people. Children hiding in crystal shelters, villages aflame, families fleeing from metal claws. The message was clear. We are the Thrinians. We are under attack by the Harvek drones. We beg for help. To any who hear us, please, answer. The signal was sent. Days passed, then weeks. The Thrinians watched the skies, waiting for ships. They checked their receivers again and again, but nothing came. The empires heard the call, but they turned away. The Valorian Dominion, proud masters of trade, dismissed the signal as a waste of time. "Why risk our fleets for a small people? There is no profit in it," said their merchants. The Zarhek clans, warriors of great honor, saw no challenge in fighting drones. Machines bring no glory in battle. Let others waste their strength, their warlords decided. Even the Celery Union, famous for its wisdom, ignored the call. "We cannot save every world," their council reasoned. "We must guard our own." And so the Thrinians waited, their hopes fading. Their beacon still sang across the stars, but the galaxy remained silent. On the 7th week, Elder Mirat stood once more in the crystal hall. His shoulders were heavy with despair. "No one is coming," he whispered. "We are alone." But just as the council prepared for the worst, something changed. A signal arrived. Not from the great empires, not from the proud civilizations, but from a small, unremarkable corner of the galaxy. The transmission was simple, almost clumsy in its design. The language was rough, filled with strange tones. Yet its meaning was clear. "We have heard your call. We are coming." The council looked at one another in shock. Who could it be? When the translation was finished, the name appeared on the crystal wall. Humans. The Thrinians had heard little about them. Humans were newcomers to the stars, barely a century into interstellar travel. Their ships were considered primitive, their colonies young. Among the empires, humans were spoken of with amusement rather than respect. Surely, the council thought, this must be a mistake. What could humans do that mighty empires could not? Still, the message was real. A fleet of human ships was on its way. Not many, just a handful of vessels compared to the grand armadas of older species. Their engines burned bright but uneven, their hulls patched and reinforced with strange metals. Yet they came. For the first time in many weeks, the council felt something they had lost: hope. The Thrinian people gathered on the shores and crystal towers, watching the skies as the human fleet drew near. The ships were not elegant like Solari cruisers, nor massive like Zarhek warships. But there was a strength in their design, practical, rugged, built for endurance. When the first human ship landed, the Thrinians held their breath. The ramp opened and figures walked out in simple armor. Their steps were firm, their eyes steady. They did not bring words of superiority or demands of tribute. Instead, their leader raised a hand in greeting and said in a clear, translated voice, "We came because you asked." That's reason enough. The council was silent. For so long, the galaxy had ignored them. Yet these newcomers, weak in the eyes of others, had answered. Some Thrinians wept. Others bowed in gratitude. Elder Mirat stepped forward, his voice trembling. "You heard us when no one else would. You came when others turned away. We welcome you humans as friends," the humans nodded. Their leader smiled faintly. "Then let us stand together. We don't leave people to face the dark alone." And so it began. The first bond between humans and Thrinians, forged not by power or wealth, but by simple compassion. Above them, the stars shimmered. In the distance, the Harvak drones still gathered, their shadow drawing closer. The real battle was yet to come. But for the first time, the Thrinians knew they would not face it alone, because someone had answered, and that someone was human. The arrival of the humans was not what the Thrinians had expected. When the first fleet of human ships settled into orbit, many of the alien council members whispered in doubt. The vessels were smaller than the massive warships they had seen from other empires. Their armor seemed rough. Their engines roared louder than those of refined ships, and their weapons looked like old designs compared to the shining cannons of the galaxy's great powers. "Are these the ones who came to help us?" Scholar Vela asked with worry. "They look fragile. How can they face the Harvak drones?" Elder Mirat watched the strange ships with quiet thought. He had felt despair for so long, and yet, the simple fact that someone came brought him courage. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "strength is not always measured by the size of one's fleet." The humans wasted no time. Their shuttles descended quickly, carrying teams of soldiers, engineers, and medics. To the surprise of the Thrinians, the humans were not focused only on preparing weapons. They also began setting up field hospitals, supply stations, and shelters. Commander Elias, the leader of the human fleet, explained it clearly. "We did not come only to fight. We came to help your people survive." This idea startled the Thrinians. Most galactic powers valued combat and victory above all else. But the humans brought food packs for the hungry, medicines for the wounded, and blankets for frightened children. On the first day, when a group of human medics rushed into a burning Thrinian village to save injured families, the alien council truly began to understand. The humans risked their lives in flames and falling debris. One human soldier even carried 3 Thrinian children on his back, refusing to stop until they were safe. The villagers gathered, their crystal eyes wide with wonder. "They protect us as if we are their own," whispered one mother. The Thrinians had expected warriors. Instead, they found protectors. Still, doubts remained. That evening in the Crystal Hall, the council gathered with Commander Elias. The human leader stood tall, his uniform plain compared to the ornate robes of the Thrinians. Scholar Vela spoke first. "We are grateful you came, but the Harvak drones are endless. They tear apart worlds. What can a small fleet like yours do against such a storm?" Elias looked at her with steady eyes. "We will not promise miracles, but we do not run from storms. We face them together." His words were simple, yet they carried weight. Elder Mirat studied the humans. "You brought more than soldiers." "Why?" Elias smiled faintly. "Because battles are not won only with weapons. They are also won with hope. If your people believe they can survive, then we all have a chance." The council fell into silence. In their long history, no empire had spoken such words to them. The great powers always demanded tribute or loyalty in return for aid. The humans asked for nothing. They only asked to stand beside them. The next day, the Harvak drones attacked again. A swarm of metal wings descended from the skies, their bodies shining like black glass under the suns. Their sharp claws tore at the forests, their beams scorched the land. Villagers screamed as shelters shook under the assault. Human and Thrinian forces rushed to defend. The Thrinians used their small defense craft, firing beams of light from crystal cannons. But their weapons were too weak to pierce the drone's armor. One by one, their ships fell from the sky. The humans, however, fought differently. Their ships darted in close, weaving between the drones with surprising agility. Missiles streaked through the air, guided by clever human tactics. Instead of standing in lines, the humans moved unpredictably, like hunters circling their prey. On the ground, human soldiers worked alongside Thrinian guardians. The humans carried projectile rifles, old compared to energy weapons but devastating against drone joints. Each shot cracked with force, breaking the machines apart piece by piece. "Your weapons. They break through the drone's shells," cried a Thrinian defender in shock. A human sergeant shouted back while reloading. "Aim for the joints! Don't fight them where they're strongest. Break them where they're weakest." The Thrinians had never thought this way. They always faced enemies directly with honor. But the humans showed them something new: strategy through adaptation. The battle raged for hours. At one moment, a group of drones broke through the lines and charged toward a shelter filled with children. The Thrinian guardians shouted in panic, unable to stop them in time. But then a squad of human soldiers rushed forward. They placed themselves between the drones and the children, holding the line with nothing but their rifles and determination. Explosions shook the ground. Metal claws scraped against human armor, yet they did not move back. When reinforcements arrived, the drones lay broken. The children were safe. One Thrinian elder later asked a human soldier, "Why would you risk your life for children not your own?" The soldier simply answered, "Because they are children. That's all that matters." The word spread quickly among the Thrinians. For the first time, they began to believe that perhaps these humans were not weak at all. Their power was not in their ships or weapons, but in their hearts. After the battle, the humans and Thrinians gathered in the rebuilt shelters. Engineers from both sides worked together, repairing ships and building stronger defenses. Elder Mirat walked among them, watching carefully. He saw a human engineer showing a young Thrinian how to strengthen a shield generator using simple metal plates. He saw medics from both species treating the wounded side by side. Mirat whispered to himself, "They do not act like saviors. They act like partners." That night the council met again. Scholar Vela, who had doubted the humans most of all, spoke softly. "Perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps their strength is not in their machines, but in their unity." Elder Mirat nodded. "Yes, they came when no one else did. And already they have given us more than weapons. They have given us hope." Commander Elias addressed them calmly. "We cannot promise victory, but if you will stand with us, we will fight at your side until the end." And for the first time, the Thrinians agreed without fear. The stars above Thrynos burned brightly that night. The Harvek drones would come again, stronger and in greater numbers. Everyone knew this. But something had changed. The Thrinians no longer waited in silence for doom. They had found unlikely rescuers, humans, the newcomers, the underestimated. And though their ships were smaller and their weapons older, the Thrinians had seen a truth that the empires had ignored. Humans fought not for glory, not for profit, not for pride. They fought because someone needed them, and that perhaps was the greatest strength of all. The war for survival had only begun. But for the first time in many cycles, the Thrinians did not face it alone. They faced it with humans. The Harvek drones did not rest. Every few days, new swarms darkened the skies of Thrynos, testing defenses, breaking walls, and forcing the Thrinians to retreat deeper into their shelters. Yet each time, the humans stood ready. The Thrinians had expected their rescuers to fight with shining fleets and mighty energy weapons, like the empires of legend. But humans did not fight that way. They fought differently. They fought in a way that was strange, unpredictable, and most of all effective. In the first great counterattack, the Thrinians saw this clearly. The drones swept down in numbers too great to count. Their wings reflecting the suns like sheets of dark steel. The Thrinians tried to meet them with shields and crystal beams. But the drones adapted, shifting patterns, forcing their way past barriers. Elder Mirat stood in the command tower, his heart sinking. "They are too many. We cannot hold." But Commander Elias only leaned over the glowing map. His eyes narrowed, sharp and focused. "Then we don't hold. We move." The humans launched small strike teams across the battlefield. Instead of standing still, they ran through the forests, climbed the cliffs, and set up ambushes. Their weapons were old compared to galactic standards, but they used them with cunning. Mines were buried under roots, traps hidden in streams, decoys scattered in the open. The drones, built to attack directly, were confused. They expected defenders to form lines to fight in patterns. Instead, they were dragged into chaos. One Thrinian guardian gasped as he watched humans use wires to pull down a massive drone like hunters bringing down a wild beast. "They fight like water flowing where the enemy does not expect," Not water. Another corrected softly, eyes wide. Like fire. They spread, they burn, they change shape. After the battle, the Thrinian Council asked Commander Elias about his methods. You do not fight like the others, Elder Mirat said. The empires would have built strong walls and waited. You did not. Elias gave a small smile. Because walls fall. They always fall. But if we stay moving, thinking, changing, we find ways to keep going. That's how humans survive. Scholar Vela tilted her head. Is that why you came? Because you believe survival is worth more than pride? The human commander's smile faded. He looked at the floor for a moment as if remembering something far away. Then he said quietly, We came because you asked, and because no one deserves to be left alone. In the days that followed, the Thrinians began to learn from the humans. Human engineers taught them how to strengthen their fragile shields with simple reinforcements. Don't think about perfection, one engineer explained, hammering metal plates into place. Think about what works right now. Human soldiers trained Thrinian guardians in new tactics. Do not meet them head-on, a sergeant shouted during drills. Strike from the sides, from above, from below. Make them chase shadows. Even the children watched with wonder. They saw humans laugh in the face of danger, joke while repairing weapons, sing songs around campfires after battles. It was strange and comforting at the same time. Why do they laugh when tomorrow could bring death? One young Thrinian asked. An elder answered softly, Because that is how they push away fear. It is their strength. But the real lesson came not from words but from actions. One evening, alarms blared across the valley. A group of drones had broken through and targeted a transport filled with fleeing families. The human and Thrinian defenders rushed to intercept, but they were too far. Without hesitation, a squad of human pilots launched their fighters, even though their fuel was nearly gone. They soared into the sky, ramming into the drones at close range. Explosions lit up the darkness. When the survivors returned, scarred and exhausted, they carried smiles of relief. The families are safe, one pilot reported simply. A Thrinian child, his eyes wide with tears, asked the pilot, Why did you risk so much? You could have died. The pilot knelt, resting a hand gently on the child's shoulder. Because you deserve to live. That's enough reason for us. The story spread across Thrynos like wildfire. The humans did not protect for reward. They did not fight for glory. They fought because it was right. The Thrinians began to call it the human way. The human way was not about the strongest ships or the brightest weapons. It was about standing together, adapting, refusing to surrender. It was about kindness in the face of despair, courage in the face of fear, and loyalty in the face of hopelessness. Soon, even the Thrinian Council began to change. Scholar Vela, once doubtful, stood in front of her people and declared, We may not be mighty, we may not be rich, but we have something greater now. We have allies who see us as worth saving. The people cheered, their voices rising across the crystal towers. For the first time, they believed they had a chance. Still, the danger was far from over. Scouts reported that the Harvick drones were building something new, a central hive deeper in the mountains pulsing with strange energy. If left unchecked, it could produce swarms 10 times larger than before. In the command tent, the leaders gathered. The glowing map displayed the hive like a dark wound on the land. Elder Mirat's face was pale. If the hive is not destroyed, then Thrynos will fall. The council turned to Commander Elias. What will you do? The human commander studied the map for a long moment. His voice, when he finally spoke, was steady. We will go after it. Directly into the hive. Gasps filled the room. That is madness. Scholar Vela exclaimed. No empire has dared to strike a drone hive. To face it is to face endless death. Elias did not flinch. Perhaps, but waiting will only bring the end slower. If we strike now, we have a chance. Mirat leaned forward. You would risk everything? Even your own lives? The human commander's eyes met his. We risk everything because that is what survival demands. If we do not fight for tomorrow, then tomorrow will never come. Silence followed. At last, Elder Mirat rose to his feet. Then we will fight with you. If this is the human way, then let it also be the Thrinian way. That night, the people of Thrynos prepared for war. Human and Thrinian side by side, working, planning, sharpening their courage. Above them, the stars shone cold and distant. The great empires still ignored their plight, too proud or too selfish to act. But the Thrinians no longer cared. They had something far more valuable than the help of arrogant powers. They had allies who refused to abandon them. They had humans, and together they would face the storm. For tomorrow, the battle would not be about survival alone. It would be about proving something greater, that sometimes the smallest and most underestimated of all can rise to stand against the endless dark, and when they do, the galaxy cannot help but take notice. The dawn rose red over Thranos. The twin suns painted the sky with colors of fire, and to the Thrinians it felt like a warning. The Harvek drones were coming again, but this time things were different. For weeks, the humans had worked side by side with the Thrinians. They had trained them, taught them, and most importantly, given them hope. Now that hope would be tested in the greatest battle of their lives. Scouts had confirmed the truth. Deep in the mountain valley, the drones had built a central hive. Its black walls pulsed with energy, feeding new machines. Already, fresh swarms poured out each day, growing faster than before. If the hive was allowed to grow, it would consume not just Thranos, but every nearby world. In the command tent, the leaders studied the glowing map. Elder Mirat's voice trembled with both fear and determination. If the hive stands, we are lost. If we destroy it, we may yet live. Commander Elias pointed to the valley, his finger pressed firmly on the map. Then we strike here, straight into the heart. The council murmured in disbelief. No empire had ever dared to attack a hive directly. It was suicide, they thought. But the humans were not like the empires. They were ready to risk everything. Scholar Vela asked softly, "Why? Why would you throw yourselves against certain death?" Elias looked at her, his eyes steady. "Because waiting is worse. If we wait, the hive grows stronger. If we strike, at least we have a chance." Mirat nodded slowly. "Then we will strike with you." The preparations began at once. Human engineers built heavy explosives from scraps, shaping them into charges that could pierce the hive walls. Thrinian builders added crystal amplifiers to strengthen the blasts. Together they created weapons neither species could have built alone. Soldiers trained in mixed squads, human rifles and Thrinian crystal spears side by side. The humans taught the aliens how to fight in small groups, to move with speed instead of waiting behind shields. The Thrinians, in turn, showed the humans secret paths through the forests and mountains, hidden by crystal growths. It was unity that made them strong. On the night before the attack, the people gathered in the Crystal City. Fires burned bright, lighting the faces of warriors and civilians alike. Children sang soft songs of courage, their voices rising into the night. Humans joined in with their own rough songs, strange in sound but filled with spirit. Elder Mirat stood before them all, his voice carried across the crowd. "Tomorrow we fight not only for survival but for a future. And we do not fight alone. We fight with those who came when no one else did. We fight with humans." Cheers filled the air. For the first time in many lifetimes, the Thrinians shouted not in fear but in strength. The next morning, the assault began. The human ships lifted into the sky, engines roaring. Thrinian defense craft followed close behind, their crystal beams glowing. The combined fleet cut across the horizon, heading straight for the mountains where the hive waited. From above, the hive looked like a black wound in the land. Towers of metal rose like claws, and swarms of drones circled like vultures. The air shimmered with energy. The moment the fleet was spotted, the hive reacted. Thousands of drones poured out, filling the sky like a living storm. Their wings blotted out the suns, their metal bodies gleaming. Commander Elias gave the order. "Engage!" Missiles streaked into the swarm. Crystal beams cut through the air. Explosions filled the sky, lighting up the darkness. The humans darted in unpredictable patterns, weaving between enemies, drawing them into traps. The Thrinians followed, guided by new tactics they had learned. They moved not as scattered defenders, but as a single coordinated force. Still, the battle was brutal. Drones smashed into human ships, tearing away metal. Beams struck Thrinian craft, sending them spiraling into the forest below. Yet no one retreated. Together, they pressed forward. On the ground, strike teams advanced toward the hive walls. Human soldiers carried explosives, while Thrinian guardians shielded them with crystal barriers. The path was filled with danger. Drones swarmed, beams scorched the earth, and the ground shook with tremors from the hive's energy core. One squad was pinned down near a ravine. Drones surrounded them, claws snapping. A young Thrinian guardian cried out in panic. But before despair could take him, a human sergeant shouted, "Hold the line! Together! The sergeant charged, his rifle blazing. Inspired, the Thrinian followed, striking with his spear. Side by side, they broke through the swarm and reached the wall. When they planted the first charge, the ground thundered with an explosion. A section of the hive cracked, black shards flying into the air. The defenders cheered. It was proof that the hive could bleed. The battle raged for hours. In the skies, the fleet fought desperately, holding back endless waves. On the ground, squads pushed deeper, planting more charges. One by one, cracks spread across the hive's walls, but the drones were not finished. From the heart of the hive, a massive construct emerged. A drone larger than any seen before. Its body glowed with red energy, its wings casting shadows across the valley. Elder Mirat gasped from the command tower. "What is that?" Commander Elias's jaw tightened. "Their guardian. Their last defense." The giant drone roared, unleashing beams that tore through the battlefield. Ships fell from the sky. Squads scattered under the blasts. Elias turned to his pilots. "All units target the guardian. Bring it down no matter the cost." The humans and Thrinians threw everything they had at the monster. Missiles, beams, rifles all struck its armor. Slowly, painfully, cracks appeared. Finally, with a combined strike from above and below, the great machine collapsed in a storm of fire. But the victory came at a cost. Many ships lay broken. Many warriors would not rise again. At last, the final charges were planted. The strike teams fell back, racing through forests and cliffs as the hive shook violently. Commander Elias gave the order. "Detonate." The explosions echoed like thunder across the mountains. Flames burst from the hive walls. The black towers shattered. The ground split open as the energy core collapsed, sending shockwaves through the valley. The hive was destroyed. The swarms, once endless, faltered. Their movement slowed, their wings drooped. Without their core, the drones collapsed one by one, crashing into the earth like broken stars. Silence fell over the battlefield. For the first time in months, the skies above Thrynos were clear. In the aftermath, the survivors gathered. Humans and Thrinians stood side by side, their faces marked by exhaustion, loss, and yet triumph. Elder Mirat looked to Commander Elias. "We did what no empire dared. We struck at the hive and lived." Elias shook his head. "We struck together. That made the difference." Scholar Vela, once doubtful, stepped forward. Her voice was soft but firm. "The galaxy will not believe this. They will say it is impossible. But we will tell them the truth. We will tell them that humans came when no one else did. And together we broke the storm." The people cheered, their voices rising across the mountains. It was the turning point. The Harvick drones were not gone, but their greatest weapon was shattered. And for the first time, the Thrinians knew they had a future, not because of their strength alone, but because of the humans who fought with them. The mountains of Thrynos were silent. The war had ended, but the air was heavy with both grief and relief. Fires still burned in distant valleys, and the ground shook softly under the weight of the fallen hive. The sky was clearer now, but it carried a quiet reminder: the cost of victory. The Thrinians gathered in the rebuilt Crystal Plaza. The crowd was made of survivors, warriors, families, children, and the humans who had fought beside them. Many were injured, many bore scars that could not be healed, but there was a sense of peace, of shared purpose stronger than any weapon. Elder Mirat stood before the crowd. His crystal staff reflected the sun's light, casting small beams across the plaza. His voice was calm, but filled with deep meaning. "We have lived through darkness," he said. "The Harvick drones came to take all we have, but we did not stand alone. We fought together, and together we survived." The crowd cheered softly. Their eyes were drawn to the humans standing at the edge of the plaza. They were battered and tired, but still standing. Commander Elias stepped forward, his armor scratched, his face tired but calm. "We did not come to be heroes," he said. "We came because we could not ignore your call. You were in danger, and we answered. That is what humanity does." The Thrinians listened, silent and amazed. Many had expected pride or glory, but instead they heard something simple: compassion. In the days that followed, the people of Thrynos began rebuilding. The hive's destruction had left scars across the mountains and valleys, but it had also created something new. Humans and Thrinians worked together to heal the land. They rebuilt villages, restored fields, and repaired ships. Human engineers taught Thrinian builders new methods of construction. They used crystal reinforcements and flexible designs, so shelters could stand against storms and future attacks. Children helped carrying tools and materials, learning not just about building but about cooperation. The Thrinians had learned something greater than war that day. They had learned a new way of living. Scholar Vela walked among the workers, watching humans and Thrinians speak freely, laugh together, and share meals. She said softly to Elder Mirat, "They have taught us not only how to fight but how to stand united." Mirat nodded. "They gave us hope when hope was gone." News of the battle spread quickly across the galaxy. Other civilizations began to speak of the smallest species who had faced the greatest threat and won. They spoke not of giant fleets or mighty powers, but of humans, the newcomers who had entered the war without demand, without reward, without claim. They had come simply because they could not ignore a cry for help. Many in the galaxy began to wonder, what was it about humans that made them different? Was it their courage, their creativity, their refusal to leave others in darkness? The answer spread quietly, whispered from planet to planet. Humans fight not only for victory, but for compassion. For the Thrinians, humanity's legacy was not only in victory, but in trust. Elder Mirat declared that a new festival would be held every year, the Day of Unity, to remember the bond between their people and the humans who came to save them. On this day, Thrinians would light crystal fires across the cities and towers and sing songs of courage. They would tell the story of the humans who answered the silent plea. Scholar Vela wrote it into the history books. The humans did not come as conquerors. They came as friends, and in doing so, they taught the galaxy the meaning of strength. Even the children learned the lesson. In the crystal schools, they were taught not only math, science, and history, but also the story of humanity's choice, the choice to help when no one else would. But humanity's legacy spread beyond Thrynos. Other species, inspired by the story, began to rethink the way they responded to calls for aid. The empires that had once ignored the Thrinian plea began to question their own pride. Diplomats spoke of alliances. Generals discussed strategies to help others rather than wait for profit. Across the galaxy, something shifted. Perhaps not every civilization would change, but a seed had been planted, a seed of compassion carried by humans. And in quiet places where fleets and politics were far away, stories of the battle spread. Children on distant worlds would hear the tale, not as a myth but as truth, that there was a species among the stars who fought because it was right. Back on Thrynos, life returned to a fragile peace. The humans had rebuilt much of the planet's defense, but they stayed not as rulers but as partners. They shared maps of the galaxy, taught new ways of building, and trained future generations of warriors. Elder Mirat called a council meeting. Our people will never forget what humanity has done. The galaxy will remember it too. But the true legacy of this day is not in victory, but in the choice we made together. Commander Elias stood beside him. We came because you asked, but we stay because we believe that this bond must last. We believe that no species should face the dark alone. It was not a pledge of command. It was a promise of friendship. Years later, the story of Thrynos and the humans became legend. Across the galaxy, a quiet phrase was repeated. When no one answered, the humans came. It was a phrase filled with meaning, not just of war, but of who humans were, their will to act, their courage to risk, their choice to protect even without reward. The Thrinians wrote it into their history. Scholars across worlds studied it. Children sang it in songs, and the humans themselves carried it quietly in their hearts, knowing they had done something greater than victory. They had proven that even in the vast cold of the galaxy, hope could still be answered, and for the Thrinians, humanity was no longer just a distant species. They were family among the stars, because when no one answered their cry for help, humans came.